I'm pleased to introduce Renee Rosenberg, founder of Positivity Pro. Renee, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So maybe we can begin it in just a moment. First, I'd like to know who's on today. So if you could please put your name in the chat, I would love to see who's here and to get some idea of who the audience is. Yeah, hi, Sonia, Penny, hello, oh, Jenny. Okay, Sonia and Jenny. Okay. And Providencia, okay, from Brooklyn. Lovely to see you all here. And Jennifer, lovely. Jennifer from Rochester. Nice, Linda. Hi, Linda. Glad you're here. And Nasia, am I pronouncing that right, Nasia? I hope so. Give me a yes if I am, please, so I know that I've got it. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so happy that you've joined us today for this really interesting session. One of my favorite things to talk about is how to stay positive and how to be productive when you're over 50 and when you're in job search and just for your life so that you can be happier and more joyful in your life, which is very important for longevity, for health, for well-being, which I will talk about in this presentation. So I got the first slide up. Thank you, Jeffrey, which is the title of my presentation, which is Unlock Your Potential, 5 Strategies for Positive and Productive Over 50 Life. And I couldn't help but put my alternative title, which I always love to use, because I really think we need to stay active and positive and think of ourselves as really being energetic. And so this title, which is one of my favorite titles of my workshops, is Older Workers Rock. So all of you just know that you all rock and you all rock that you're here today. So let's look at this first slide, Jeffrey, and see where we're going. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question, and I'd like to, thank you for the hearts. That's lovely. I love that. Who is the older worker? Is it the woman it might be on yours, it's on my left. On your left, the gentleman in the middle, or the one on the other side? Who is the older worker? The one with the red tie, the one without the tie, or the woman in the blue suit? Who do you think is the older worker? Anyone have any guesses here? The woman, okay. Jenny, everyone. Linda, everyone. Okay. All right. Well, those of you who said everyone, you're right. Everyone in this picture, and this is really a trick question. I'm trying to trick you a little bit right in the beginning. Everyone, yeah, it is everyone. The woman on the left is 80, and she was still working. The gentleman in the middle was 40, and the gentleman on the end with the red tie was 60. And so we've got a 60, 40, 80 in here. And they're all still working, and they were still working, and all were older workers. So older worker can apply to any age over 40, really. And that's a very large stretch when you think about it, from 40 to 80, and sometimes even beyond, because there are people working into their 80s. And I do know a few in my work who are actually working into their 90s. So older worker can really be many, many years. And we really don't know who we're talking about when we say older worker, because it could be any of these. So let's see what the facts are about older workers. Next. The fact is that older workers are now healthier because we're living longer, and we are living healthier, and we're working longer. That should be a longer, not a long, but we're working longer. And so there's more workers, there's more people that want to be in the workforce. And it's becoming tougher and tougher, however. But the good news is that there is a talent shortage in younger workers, that the older worker has become now more of a valued commodity. And Experience now is needed more than ever. Knowledge, experience of people who have been in the workforce, who can actually manage the younger workers and mentor the younger workers. So there is a place now for you if you are someone 40 and over. Although this workshop, this talks about being 50 and over, but starting at 40, because that's the age when discrimination actually starts to set in, according to the American Disabilities Act, that 40 is the new age for discrimination. So any age from 40 and over, know that you're wanted, you're needed in the workplace, but there are problems, there are challenges that you face, and there are obstacles which can create barriers to your being successful and productive in the workforce. So next. Challenges. I've listed 3 in this presentation, and I'd like to look at these a little closer, and then I'm going to give you some suggestions of how you can deal with these challenges which create the obstacles and the barriers. So let's look at the next slide and see what are the first, and I think the most really damaging challenges that are facing people who are starting to age, who feel they're starting to age and who want to be in the workforce and who want to have a productive life, is that so many people are caught in a negative mind lock of attitudes and beliefs. And if you look at this slide is it's a bit cluttered, and it's meant to make you feel a little anxious and a little uncomfortable, because that's what happens when you have a negative attitude and you have negative beliefs about aging. And I've listed a bunch of different things that come up with people about aging and about being in the workforce. And it's focused on failure. Many times you focus people over 50, focus on failure. Focus on the idea that because they're older, they're not going to be successful. They're not going to have a good opportunity in the workforce. They're not going to get along with younger workers. So there's focus on failure. There's anger. There's anger about not being able to get a job as quickly as before. There's anger at the younger workers. There's anger at the younger bosses. There's avoidance. There's resistance. And there's fearfulness. There's cultural ageism, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. And there's a lot of conflicted feelings about getting older and being in the workforce. But the 4 that I think really hurt you and hurt most people when they're older and they're trying to look for a job or be active in the workforce or deal with the different generations that they're facing in the workforce is the blaming, the complaining, the worrying, and the feelings of being powerless. I'm curious if any of you feel that any of these are happening to you. And if they are, I hope that by the end of this presentation that you'll find some ways of dealing with these feelings. Because what happens is they cause stress, they cause exhaustion, and most of all, they can cause depression. And we don't want that. We want to stay happy, we want to stay productive, and we want to be moving forward. So that's the first one, is the negative attitudes and beliefs. And as you can see in the next slide, that a negative attitude can affect your health, it can affect your resilience, and it can affect, most importantly, your longevity, your life expectancy. And there's been research that they've been working on now for a number of years. Many of the research companies are telling us that when you have a negative feeling and a negative thought, that you can start to make yourself sick. And then you hurt your well-being and you hurt your longevity. So we all want to have good longevity, don't we? And so we need to figure out ways of how dealing with these negative attitudes. Next slide. The second challenge, problem, barrier, obstacle is the self-stereotyping. And I like to call this internalized ageism. It's what do we say to ourselves? Do any of you ever say to yourself, I'm too old? Or something like that? Put it in the chat if you think you do. Let me see some responses to that self-stereotyping, because this is something that we're not even aware of. It's really internalized almost. It's unconscious. It's an unconscious belief that we have that it's a systematic discrimination against older people. And we have this discrimination sometimes even about ourselves in the self-stereotyping. And the culture influences us to believe that age is not valued. So we start to believe that. We start to believe that this is true. But if you have any beliefs or any thoughts or any ideas that you are too old to be working, too old to be hired, then you are a victim of this internalized ageism. So anyone have anything they want to put into the chat that they think they've been saying that maybe they need to stop saying now? Maybe you need to change the words that you're using. Think about it. Think about some of the things that you are saying. And let's look at the next third challenge that we have to being productive and positive in the workforce and in life when we're over 50. This one, George Burns, I think he said it all. He said, when I was young, I was called a rugged individualist. When I was in my 50s, I was considered eccentric. And here I am now doing the same things I did then. And I'm actually labeled senile. This is cultural stereotyping. And this is what the culture has done to us. When we get older, we believe this. We believe this. We believe that this is what happens. But the truth is, it's not true. It's not true at all. Okay, next slide, please. This is the third obstacle, third challenge that we need to face, and it's the media. The media loves to write articles about how we confront ageism and how people are getting older and what's happening to the workforce. There was an article, this was a number of years ago, but it's not really new and it's not really one that I think really is dated. I think that you can find articles like this now, but I happened to find this one in the front page of the New York Times. And it read, for the unemployed over 50, fears of never working again. Now, if you read this article in the New York Times on the front page, you start to think, wow, 50, I'm 50, or I'm 60, maybe I'll never work again either. So it's a very negative article, and it actually was one that wasn't true. It was about a woman who was 53 in Puget Sound, which is up near Seattle, in a beautiful place to live, actually, where there's a lot of jobs and a lot of employment. But she was looking not the right way. She was looking on a computer every day. And this is what the article talked about, how ambitious she was, getting up every morning and going onto her internet and looking at job boards and answering job board requests for work. And she never got one. And she was doing this for years. And so this article talks about totally wrong way to job search. And then they say that shows how if you're over 50, you may never work again. So don't read the media. Don't pay attention to the media. Just know that you are capable, that there is a need for someone who is over 50, over 60, even over 70 to be working in the workforce. So many of my clients have gotten jobs in their 50s, 60s, and 70s because their expertise and their knowledge is needed. So don't read the media. That's another challenge that faces us nowadays. So to help you, in the next slide, I've quoted William James. William James was the father of modern psychology, turn of the century. And he was a very positive, hopeful person. And he had a very positive mindset. And he said, and this is back in the turn of the century, that the greatest discovery of our generation is that a human can alter his. And really now we should change the his to a different pronoun, could alter their life by altering their attitude. So you can change your life by altering your attitude. William James had it right. And that's what I'm going to hopefully help you to understand and to see a little bit about how you can do that using some of the tips that I'm going to give you now in the next slide. So I'm going to offer you a positive attitude toolbox. And I love tools. I love working with tools. Some of you might know or have read my bio that I'm a jeweler, and I really love tools. I love working with saws and chisels and hammers and all those things. But I'm hoping that you too will start to love working with tools to help you when you feel that you need a little help to push you a little bit to stay positive and stay resilient. So I'm going to introduce a few tools for you today. And let's look at the first one in the next slide. First tool is to reverse your negative self-talk. William James, who I love to quote because he was so positive, said that as we think, that's how we start to feel, and that's how we start to behave. The way we think and feel influences our actions. So if we think that we're too old, even if we don't want to think that, if we think it, we start to feel it, and it starts to become part of who we are, and we start to show that that's how we feel, and then we start to act that way. So it's very important to think about how you're thinking, but this is important too, because thinking is up here, and sometimes it's unconscious. It's habit forming. We don't even realize that we're thinking negatively. So it's very important to think about when you say something to yourself, when you start to feel it, to start to question it and say, is this going to influence my behavior? Is this negative? So reversing negative self-talk is the first tool that we're looking at. And let's see how we can do that in the next slide. What we think about, we will become. This is one of my quotes, and I've always believed this, that if we think about it, based on William James, we become what we think about. And if we think about age in a chronological way, if we think about ourselves as a number, and we think, oh my gosh, that's a very big number, then that's negative thinking. And age is really just a number. That's all that it is. And it's just the chronological way that we identify ourselves, but it's not the way that you need to really be identifying yourself. So stop the negative self-stereotyping and your internalized biases. Stop thinking of yourself as a number. Stop thinking of yourself as 70, 75, 80, 60, 68. All of those are just numbers, and they don't represent who you are and what you can do. They are internalized biases that prevent you from moving forward productively and positively. And you'll wind up having this little face just like this guy, if that's what you start thinking. So let's look at the next slide. So be aware of your self-talk. But the problem that we have, and this is a problem for everyone, and according to the research, is that we do default to negativity. Does anyone have an idea of what percentage of the thoughts running through our head are negative as opposed to positive on a daily basis? New research tells us that we have thousands of thoughts running through our head, from 5,000 to 6,000, maybe to 7,000 even. So what percentage of those do you think are negative? And this can tell us why we default to negativity. Linda, correct. 75%. Yes, 75% of those thousands of thoughts running around in our head. That's a lot of negativity. So we have a lot of work to do to really overcome that negativity and overcome those thoughts that are running around that are making us behave in a certain way, which is to not be so happy about our age. So we need to be really very, very aware of these thoughts when they happen and when they pop up. Next. So do you recognize any of these? These are some of the thoughts that can pop up, the catastrophizing, the woulda, shoulda, coulda, the emotionalizing, and the generalizing. These are all called cognitive distortions for things that are causing the negativity in our brain, those 75%. And there's a whole lot more. I've just picked the top 4 that I think really make a big difference. So anybody want to speak to any of these? Anyone tell me that they think they want to share that they some of their cognitive distortions? Or tell me, what do you think? What is catastrophizing? What does that mean to you? And do you ever do that? Any thoughts on that? Please put it into the chat if you have any thoughts on what does catastrophizing mean. Okay, never. Yeah, and always, yeah. Catastrophizing is like, well, this is the worst. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. It's horrible. It's awful. We use all these terrible, big negative words. And again, remember what I just said about the words that float around in our head. If they're negative, they start to influence how we feel and they start to influence how we behave. So catastrophizing, whenever you use any of those words that are just so big that this can't be controlled, it's just the worst. Stop yourself and think, is this a negative word and how can I change it? How about the shoulda, woulda, coulda? This is very popular, very popular. Alvin Ellis used to talk about this all the time. The shoulda, coulda, yeah. Yeah, the if only. Thank you, Eileen. Oh, and I see. Okay, Providencia. Yeah, making things bigger than what they are. This would be the catastrophizing. Yes, really making them, blowing them up. And now the shoulda, woulda, coulda is, you know, the regret. It's the regret. I should have done that. If I would have done that, then I could have done this. But the truth is, it's done. You can't do it anymore. So you have to, as soon as you start thinking and start saying, I shoulda, or I woulda, or I coulda. Think of how you can replace that with something positive. Positive, because remember, these are unconscious thoughts that come up into our mind. Emotionalizing. Emotionalizing. This is one that we really, oh, I see some good things coming up. I see, thank you again, Providence. Yeah, have to. Yeah, creates pressure. Yes, I have to. Creates pressure also. Absolutely. And I choose to is much better, and I want to is a much better substitute. Yes, thank you for putting those in the chat. And then we've got emotionalizing. And we do this without even thinking because, again, it's unconscious. We start to say to ourselves things like, oh, what's wrong with me? You know, this is, I shouldn't have, we go to the shouldas again. We mix them up. I should have done this. I can't, this is awful. I'm being awful. All of this is the emotional that comes up when we're into the negativity, and none of it is good. None of it is good. It helps to stop us, not to keep us going. And we don't want that. We want to stay resilient. We want to stay happy. We want to stay positive. And then there's generalizing, which is something that I think is really common. It's like, this always happens to me. It doesn't always happen to you, but you start to think it does. Or I can't do this because everything is bad, or no one will hire me. All of this is generalizing, and none of it, again, is really true. So all of these are cognitive distortions that swim around in our head, all that negativity, that 75%. And we can only change it with awareness, listening to ourselves, and really being mindful of the language that we use. Next slide will give us some other ideas. So we want to reverse negative self-talk. And here are a bunch of negative self-talk beginnings that we go through that I've heard from my clients many, many times. And I'd like to go through them now and see if you can have some answers for them. So I'd like you to take just a little time now, and if you have any paper in front of you, that would be great, to write down the answers to these negative self-talks. And then put them, if you'd like, put them into the chat. Self-talk is the most important tool we have. That's right, Providencia, but it has to be positive, not negative self-talk. And then it is, it is a challenge. Absolutely. It is our challenge because they are unconscious, they are habit forming, and we're not even aware sometimes that they're thinking of it. Okay, so it's a problem. Thank you, Eileen. I can. Yeah. It's a challenge. I'm hopeful. I'm excited. Okay, I love that, Jennifer. Thank you. I am experienced enough to know that. Ooh, what was that? So you can see that we can change these. And if any of these seem familiar to you, if you've said any of these in the past or just recently, or if you will in the future, which you probably will because these swim around in our heads, See how you can change them. See how you can stop yourself. And I've always used to tell my clients that a very good way when you feel something or you feel something negative coming up and you know that it's going to be negative, just go stop. And when you do that, you're actually stopping your thinking, you're stopping your ability to really continue with this negative thought. And then you're opening up some space to put some of these wonderful things that you're putting into the chat to change that negative self-talk to some positive self-talk. So I'm the too old, I'm too old. I hear that all the time. But what would be, I'd like to hear each of you, if you could please put a response to that. I know you just put a very good one into the response, Jennifer. Thank you. And I'm going to read that because I think that's a great response. I am experienced enough to know that I don't want to be uncomfortable and experience the hassle, but don't want to do it. Yeah, okay, that can happen. But when you think you're too old, you should really say, no, I'm not. I am experienced. I am knowledgeable. I am able. I am capable. And hey, I'm the best. Positive. Start with positivity. And of course, the shoulda, I shoulda, forget it. The shoulda is a very negative thing to say because it's in the past anyway. So forget it. You want to just move forward into the present, not into the future, but in the present, because that's where you have the control to be mindful of what you're saying and thinking and of your language and your positive language. So next slide. One way that you can deal with negative self-talk is to create a positive affirmation. And I love affirmations. I think they're extremely important when we're feeling a little negative or we're feeling we can't do something. But it's very important to understand how to create an affirmation. But first, I want to ask, do any of you use affirmations? Anyone have an affirmation that you want to share with us? The affirmation, I'm going to give you a little bit of tips on how you can create this. And then please put an affirmation in the chat if you have one that you're working on. An affirmation should always start with I, because it has to do with you. It's not anyone else. So you have to identify that it's I and take the power. That's where you get the power of being and believing this affirmation. And it has to be in the present tense. It can't be in the past. It can't be in the future because it has to be something that you recognize that you can do now. So it's I am, I feel, I can, I believe, any present tense verb that you want to use to move something that you want to do or change. So it's I am, I feel, I can. It should be no more than 5 words. Maybe if you push it to 7 words, but that's it. You don't want it to be too long because you want to remember it. You want it to be memorable. So any ideas in I don't see anything in the chat yet, but okay, so work on these affirmations. I am, present tense, I feel I can, 5 to 7 words, really try not to make it longer. It has to be something specific that you want to change, but you want to see yourself doing it now. This is the way a positive affirmation really helps you to create an idea, a thought, an action in your head that is positive. I can accomplish this project quickly. Okay. Yep, that's a good one. Good. Thank you, Jeffrey. You might even want to say, I can finish, because you did share about a project that you're working on. So maybe you can say, I can finish this project quickly. And then you can see it as being finished, and then you know that you've worked on it. So that might even help. Anyone else have an affirmation? Well, think about what you can use as an affirmation because they're very, very powerful. What they do is they create a visualization of something that you have done. And if you've done it, then you know that you can do it now. So it's a very, very a good way to stay positive and create as many affirmations as you like and put them in places where you can see them. because if you just write them here or just write them once, they don't work as well. You can put them on your refrigerator door, put them on your mirror in the bathroom, put them on your front door when you go out, keep them on a little card in your pocket so you can pull them out and read them. And write them, write them, write them as many times as you can. Just keep repeating them so they become real, so they become like your name and address and phone number. Although sometimes we don't always know our phone numbers anymore, but like your name and address. Repeat your affirmation, make it real, make it you, make it positive. Okay, very important. What's next slide, please? Okay, now you want to refute some negative myth. This is the other part that I mentioned. This was the second challenge that we have, is the negative myths that swim around in our minds and in the culture. And I've put up 3 of them. No jobs for people 50 plus. There's plenty of jobs for people 50 plus. But if you read the newspapers, if you read that awful article in the New York Times and other things in the media, you start to believe it. So you've got to refute it. You've got to say, this is not true. There are jobs. It's best to find a job when in a job. It's another myth that I've heard so many of my clients tell me when they come in to see me. I'm not going to find a job now. I wish I was still working, because then I could find a job. It would be easier. Not really, not anymore. Actually, I always think it's easier to find a job when you're not in a job because you have more time. When you're in a job, I think it becomes more difficult because you're actually working and you don't have that many hours to be looking. But people used this is an old myth. People used to feel this way. Nowadays, people change jobs. People, some of the research that I've been looking at say that people change jobs 10 to 15 times now in a lifetime. Change jobs. So people don't care if you're not in a job anymore. What they care about is if you're experienced, if you're knowledgeable, if you could do the work, if you can meet their needs and do what they need and what they want from a worker. That's what's important. So if you're not in a job, don't feel negative about it. Just go out there and be positive about your job search and what you offer. And the third myth that I have up here is older workers are set in their ways. You know what I like to say about that? Younger workers are also set in their ways. And if you work with younger workers, if you know younger people, then you know that that's true. So it doesn't matter. It's people, it's human. People are set in certain ways they do things, but it doesn't mean it's going to affect them on their job or on their job search. Do you know any other negative myths that we can refute and dispel? I'm looking now at some of your affirmations. Okay, Sonia, I think you need to make that a little shorter so you can remember what it is. And rather than most things, pick one. Pick one thing that you can accomplish. I can accomplish, and say what it is. That will put you in a mindset to really visualize what that is. I can get rid of those things I don't use anymore. Eileen, it sounds like you've got a lot of things. Pick 1 or 2, not so many. Be more specific. An affirmation needs to be specific. Okay, we've got another myth up here from Jeff. Older people are not current. Okay, well, this is a belief that we need to refute, because older people are not current because they are not keeping up, and keeping up is one of the problems. And one of the challenges is that you need to keep up nowadays. The world is changing so quick with the internet, with AI, with everything happening, that we need to really think about how do we keep up so that this myth about older people not being current is out the window. And any others. Older workers cannot learn new things. Yeah, that is a big problem. That is what a lot of younger people think. And then some older people actually continue that myth because they say, I can't learn that. And when you say I can't, that's negative self-talk. You can learn it if you work on it, if you take classes, if you talk to people who can teach you, because you're not going to find a job if you can't learn new things. And that's probably true, but you can learn new things. It has nothing to do with your age. Providencia, yes, specific. Specific is very important for affirmations. Eileen, you're sick because you're old. Oh my gosh, that's pretty negative, isn't it? You know what? Younger people, according to research, take more sick days than older people. Isn't that amazing? So this is not something we should be believing. Just a myth. Self-fulfilling attitude. Yeah. Yeah, myths really need to be looked at and dispelled because they are just what they are. They're a myth. They're not real. That's the definition of a myth. So as soon as you hear any of these, you have to think, okay, how do I change that around, or how do I get it out of my life and not believe it? Thanks for putting some of these others up here. So remember that myths really don't exist because they're a myth. Next one, please. Let's look at the third third tool, which is very important to keep ourselves positive and productive. And it's to practice self-care. And I really believe that this is something that we sort of ignore sometimes. We don't pay enough attention to ourselves and taking care of ourselves and our well-being. So we need to, first of all, very important as we get older, is to keep moving. We need to keep moving. People talk about exercise. Exercise is important, but just moving. And now that the weather is as well, it's still pretty cool outside. So you have to move sometimes just inside. Now, we've been sitting here for half an hour, and what I have learned is that every 20 minutes, it's really important to get up and stretch or just to move. So I'm going to ask all of you to just move your body a little bit, stretch your arms up. I'm taking some self-care right now. I'm practicing self-care. Can you practice some self-care? Can you move your body? Can you move your shoulders, lift your shoulders and move them back? Don't hunch forward, move your shoulders, lift your arms back so that your shoulders come forward and you're sitting up straight and you're waving, you're twisting. All of that is so, so important to keep moving for your body and for your mind. So when you sit for longer than 20 minutes, get up, move around, even look out somewhere 20 feet. If you can look out the window and just rest your eyes and relax your eyes a little bit from the computer and looking at the computer. So you've got to do this, keep self-care. Most important, again, is to keep moving. Also, one thing that I really love, because I study Japanese philosophies, is the Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing. Forest bathing doesn't mean to take your clothes off and wash in the forest. It means to walk in nature, to observe nature. And it's a little cold out now for some of us. So maybe you want to just open up your window and look at the sky and look at the clouds, watch a sunset if you have a view through a window. Just watch the day, watch the light of the day. If you have any trees in front of your window, if they're blowing in the breeze, look at the leaves blowing. Nature is all around us. We don't have to necessarily go into a forest. When it gets a little warmer, you can go into a park and just observe the birds, observe the flowers that are starting to bloom and spring is coming. Observe now if the snow is falling. I hope not, but on the rain, what it does, what patterns it might make. Observe nature and relax. Take care of yourself. Eat well, sleep well, take care of yourself, and keep moving. Very important for self-care, to keep you positive and productive and keep your body functioning well, especially as we age. Important to do that. And next, please. So now number 4 is to mindfully manage your job search and your life. And let's look at some of these. I've divided this into 4A and 4B. So let's look at the next slide. The next slide is 4A. A mindful job search tips. Those of you who are in job search, know what you offer. Take an assessment. Know what your skills are. Know what your values are. Valuing is very important. What makes you happy? Know what's important to you first before you go out and look for a job. Know what kind of job that you want. Know where you want to work. Know what experience you have. And again, know what your skills are to meet that experience. You want to network. I can't say this often enough. I could have put network down across that whole list, but I've only listed it 3 times. Network, network, network. Very important. And part of the networking is the hidden job market. Who can you talk to who is not someone who really is putting a job out there now? Don't go to the job boards, talk to people. Job boards are not as effective as your networking with people that you've known, people who know people who know people, people that you knew sometimes even years back. Network, network, network. Adapt to virtual, social media, and AI. Learn, go and take classes, get people to help you. There's so much on the internet now that you can be learning and growing. Don't be left behind. That's one of the myths that older people are not current. You must stay current. Or the truth is, if you're not current, you will have a harder job in job search. And it might not be about your age. It might just be that you're not current. So don't blame your age. Blame the fact that you're not staying active and up to date. Set a plan. Know what it is that you want to do and write it, write it, write it. Very important to have a written plan, not just to think about it in your head, but to write it down and to set your goals in writing. And make your goals short so that they're doable and achievable. And you can then reward yourself when you reach your goal. Really important. Build relationships, build connections, get out there, talk to people, meet people, go to meetings. Linda, I think this is something we've talked about. Get out there, build those relationships in person, get to meet people so that they know you and you know them. And then you can follow up with them at another time. And most of all, most positive tip is to stay positive. Stay positive. Next. Some more tips. Now, when I live at the beach most of the time of the year, and I watch the surfers, and I always think that what they're doing is so amazing. And I think that we need to become a surfer warrior because these are people that just don't give up. They don't give up. They keep falling off that surfboard. Some don't, but many do, and they get right back up again. So become a surfer warrior in your job search. Be aware of what's happening, be aware of the changes in the employment, be aware of the changes in the workplace, be aware of who you are and what you can do. Be prepared, prepare yourself with knowing and researching. You must research companies, you must research job trends, all of that is really important. And then take action, get out there, meet people. Be like the surfer warrior. Get up on that surfboard. Get out there. Take some, sometimes it takes some persistence and it takes some resilience and it takes some bravery to get out there and do that. But you want to move. You want to move on. You want to move on. And if that wave that you're on, you find yourself in the water, you find yourself is not effective, then go on to the next wave. This is what the surfer warrior does. So think of yourself. Am I a surfer warrior? Can I stay on that wave? Can I find the right wave that'll take me in to where I want to be? Next. And another mindful tip is to mindfully climb the ladder to success. So you want to learn new skills. It's kind of a review of what I've just said, but I like you to look at this because I want you to think of it in terms of a ladder, of climbing up to where you want to be. You want to learn new skills, you want to adjust your attitude, you want to develop a powerful pitch. Do you have a pitch? Do you have a presentation story that you tell? Do you have stories? Stories are very important. Do you have stories of things you've done at the last job? Stories you've done of things you've done in your life, in your work that are important for other people to hear. So demonstrate your skills with stories about yourself. True, short stories. People love to listen to stories, and people remember stories. They remember them more than they remember facts, numbers. They remember a story. So what story do you have about yourself in your life? Explore and research your targets and always look to keep a resilient mindset. A resilient mindset is staying positive, staying active, and knowing what you want. So this is your ladder to success in your job search. Next, please. Now we're up to 4B. And 4B, I really love this one because this is something that we really need to think about as we age, that we are living longer, we're living healthier, we're living more active. And I always say, look for role models, look for people who you can say, wow, look at them. If they did it, I can do it. And that's what's so important about having a good, positive, strong role model. So I found a few for you here. These two that I've mentioned first, I read about them a while ago and I followed them through their career at 86 and 90. They were in an elevator at the BBC in London, and they were going to visit a friend, and they were telling stories to each other and laughing. It was a very long flight up in the elevator, and there was someone else in the elevator with them, and he happened to be at the head of one of these large radio stations, a Sony radio actually. And he was listening to them. And when they got off the elevator, he followed them and he said, you know, I really want to hear more about you. And I'd like to see if we can hire you to start a program. And sure enough, they became Betty and Betty, and they became Gold Award winners of the Best Entertainment Show with 20,000 listeners and won the BBC Sony Radio Academy Gold Award at 86 and at 90. They had stories to tell. And you can never should stop. Age should not stop you. Age should encourage you to move forward and really do things that you love. And then there's Ida Keeling and Grandma Moses. Ida Keeling was a world track record winner at 102. She used to run the New York City Marathon until she was 102. And Grandma Moses began painting at 78. Ida Keeling died at 100. I think she was 106, and Grandma Moses was over 100 also. So both of them lived happy, productive, older lives. Not younger lives, but older lives. So there's a lot ahead for you to do, to think about what do you love and what are you good at. And then I listed a bunch of people who we know, who are movie stars, who are also living longer and living very productively. And at the end, I've listed my two friends, and I have the approval for both of them to mention them. Dara Lee, who's 89, and Lorraine, who's 91. Active, doing things. Dara Lee just became an artist. She does online painting, and Lorraine is still writing short stories and taking Shakespeare classes and acting. She's in an acting class of people who are over 80. So there are things for you to do, but you need sometimes to get out and look for them, not to sit home, but to go out and look for things that you can do to stay active and look for those role models in your life who are doing things into the 70s, 80s, 90s. And maybe we read about people all the time now who are in their hundreds who are also doing active things. Next. And this is a group that's my role model. This is a group of women who, when they were 60, got back together again from when they were in the 60s, in the 1960s, they were a female rock group. And in the 1960s, female rock groups, if you can remember, were not very popular. They were all mostly male rock groups. So they didn't really achieve much success. They were backups for a few famous male singers, but they never received much notice when they were doing what they were doing when they were in their 20s in the 1960s. But now they're all in their 80s, and they're called Ace of Clubs. Look them up and look up their song and listen to it. If you want to feel good, listen to that song. Women in their 80s who now have finally made it. They've come back together again. They've always kept their musical ability and have created this wonderful song, Feel Good, and maybe some others to come. Look forward to them. So look them up, do some research, and get a little boost with their energy. Very, very, very wonderful. Next, please. So this is my fifth suggestion for you. My fifth tool is to take pride in your aging. And I hope that now that I've gone through these several tools that you're feeling a little stronger and a little more positive about your age and about your job search and about your life. And it's your challenge. Your challenge is to be essence focused, not ego focused. Write this down. Put this on your refrigerator. Put this on your bathroom mirror. Put this wonderful saying, be essence focused, not ego focused. Essence is what you are, who you are, what's important to you, what you can do, who you are as a person, your resilience and your attitude, which is positive, a positive attitude toward life, not ego focused. Ego is what others tell us about ourselves, is what the culture tells us about ourselves. Be focused on who you are, not who other people out there far away, keep them far away, keep those negative influences out there, the toxic people. Keep that ego out and bring in the essence, who you really are, your beauty as you age. And George Burns, I really think he said it all. We can't help getting older, but we don't have to get old. We can't help but getting older, but we don't have to get old. Next, please. So if you'd like a copy of my 12 ways to promote yourself or my tips for maintaining a resilient job search after 50, just please email me and let me know if you would like one of them or both of them. Or if you'd like any of the quotes that I've put into this workshop, then please let me know. Any quotes that you see that you might like, or if you'd like a copy of any of my lists of how to promote yourself or how to maintain a resilient job search after 50. Please let me know. And any other questions you might have, if you would like, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to hear what you think and what some of your thoughts and concerns are. And Positivity Pro is the name of my business, and it's also my email address. So next slide, please. And just one more thing that I wanted to mention before we end, and these are my F factors, that it's very important to stay focused, not be distracted, to be flexible, to be open to the new changes that are happening. Don't ignore the changes, accept them and be flexible and open, to facilitate your fearlessness, to really know that you are in charge, not someone else, and be fast. Don't delay, don't hesitate, but be fast in your thinking, in your attitude, in your ability to change. Be friendly, develop new friendships, make connections with people, get out of the house, don't sit in the house. Get out, go to meetings, go to conferences, go to trainings, get out and be with people. I think now more people are getting out, or just do things online, join things that are online. Zoom meetings even could be good, but get out too. And then also always remember to have fun. Fun is important. We need to be happy. We need to bring joy into our lives. We need to laugh. Laugh at least. This is one of my recommendations about laughter for all of you. Laugh at least 5 times. Good belly, strong laughs 5 times a day. That's a good challenge. Laughter is very important for staying young, keeping your body young, keeping your mind young, keeping you healthy. Next. And Mark Twain said it all. George Burns and Mark Twain, 2 very wise people, and William James. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. So I would go with the first line. If you think you can, you can. That's it. That's the message today. And don't come from your ego out there, come from your essence in here. Next. So I want to thank you for being here today. And we have just a few little minutes. If you have a question, anyone would like a question, please. And where's the rest of this slide? Why isn't it coming up? There it is. Okay, that was a delay. So anyone who would like a free 15-minute consult with Renee, that's me, please contact me. Or again, if you would like a copy of my tips on how to promote yourself and how to stay positive and resilient, please let me know. Any questions? I do a lot of work in Europe. I speak in Europe frequently, and I find that older people are working, staying, if they want to, they're staying in the workforce, and they're treated a whole lot better than they are here. So it's a challenge for us, absolutely. But if we all band together and we all stay positive and we all follow some of these tips of self-talk and creating positive self-talk, then I think we can really change things around in the workforce here in the US also, and for ourselves, to keep us happier and more joyful and bring more joy into our lives. So I thank you all for being here. We have 2 more minutes. And I'm so glad that you feel better now. I hope everyone else does also. That was my goal, to make you feel better, to feel happier and more joyful in your life and toward your working and your job search. So thank you, Eileen. And thank you, Jeffrey, to keep ourselves healthy for our own
Absolutely.
well-being and our own self-care.
Absolutely. Right. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone who joined us, and see you at the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.